Hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about Zero Trust DNS and some other Microsoft news. It's Tuesday, May 7, 2024. And so the first thing I want to say, Microsoft is, of course, going through a really rough patch. Now, they just made a huge killing in AI. They're by far the leader in AI, but they totally screwed up with cloud security. The government emails all got hacked in Office 365, and Microsoft did an appalling job of handling it. They tried to lie about it, then they tried to admit only a part of it. This is what you never want to do. The only way to give incident response, you should just come clean fast with a clear statement of everything so it ends. Otherwise, you drag it out and make it 10 times more painful. So the Congress got mad and had a report saying Microsoft security is garbage. So Satya Nadella has written a security above all memo, which is a landmark like Bill Gates' 2002 memo saying, all right, we've had it. We're not going to make crap like XP anymore. We're going to put security first. And trustworthy computing is what Bill Gates.
That's what Gates had, right? Here we go again, Sam.
That's right.
History repeating itself.
Well, it's been 20 years. So
Yep.
Dr. Novella has issued a similar memo saying security above all else. Very much like what Bill Gates says from now on, every time you've got a decision to make sure to prioritize security over a new feature or whatever else you're worried about. We're going to make everything secure, secure by default.
Wow.
And so,
Yeah.
like before, that's essentially the same thing Bill Gates said, but apparently, obviously they're being humiliated and they need to like make a big statement. And I must say, the last time it really worked. Microsoft security in going from XP to Vista and their later products really did greatly improve. So it was not just empty words. They really did greatly improve the security of their product. So hopefully they'll do that again. And cloud security is a problem. I was just giving a talk yesterday, and there was a infographic that said the average person, the average worker in cloud has like 40,000 permissions, and only 99% of those permissions are never used and they're automatically assigned. And they say half of all cloud permissions are domain administrator complete permission to view everything. And that's the problem.
Oh.
The permissions in the cloud, nobody knows how to manage them. So everybody's just giving everybody full control. And
Yeah, I mean that's what we did in the beginning, right?
that's what you do. And I say that is security,
Yeah.
by the way. For first part of security is availability, making it work at all. If it doesn't work, there's nothing to secure. But the cloud is at that level. And obviously we need much better cloud security.
Yeah, and what are we into cloud? About 15 years? Is that about right?
Well, technically, sure, but I mean, real popularity, I think. Um,
10?
well, maybe I think I started using Dropbox. That was probably 15 years ago. And Gmail must be, yeah, I think you're right. I think we actually been using it a lot for 15 years now that you mention it.
Well, those are cloud apps, but let's see, when did Azure come out? And that wasn't that great.
Well, Azure is about 8 years ago, I think. And that's only
No.
Microsoft. And that's of course the Microsoft cloud where you just put everything in there, your OneDrive.
Yeah,
And that's when, of course, the risk gets much bigger. And the security did not match that risk, which is what the
yeah,
government noticed.
yeah.
Yeah, so let's hear about
Here, Sam, I'm
yeah.
looking here. Azure was first announced October 2008.
Oh,
Yeah,
I think
so
I remember I used it right away, and it was really pretty primitive back then.
it was very primitive. Yeah.
But it got
And
better pretty fast.
it took about 5 years, I'd say.
Yeah.
But yeah, so,
And now it's
10
huge.
years.
Now it's
Yeah, now
essentially
it's
survival
huge.
for Amazon Web Services. And so everybody's using it instead of Exchange, and yet it's really not very secure, which is not a good thing.
Yeah. So, interesting. Again, history repeating itself.
Yeah.
Here's one that's rather disturbing, and that's are we going with the DNS or
I would think so.
which?
Yeah. I'd like to hear about
Oh, okay. So, Sam, you're right. We need to start doing this model, which is called zero trust.
it. Right.
And Microsoft, I remember writing an article about this. It had to be 20 years ago about DNS, and specifically there were two standards that were evolving. There was secure DNS or SDNS, and then there was sec DNS or security DNS.
Is that the same thing as DNS check?
or DNSSEC. Maybe I've
Okay.
got that back. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
you're right.
okay. I
DNSSEC.
know about DNSSEC, which is a very bizarre product to fix only one small problem, which is not the main problem.
Right. And I believe maybe is DNSSEC, is that that would have been from the Linux world, right? Am I right on
Well,
that?
it was specifically to address the Dan Kaminsky attack in 2008, which it's a way you can poison the cache on DNS servers. So the only thing DNSSEC does is prevent servers from getting forged responses from other servers, nowhere near the client. So it doesn't affect your client's confidentiality, which is what most people worry about.
Yeah, yeah. So and I believe that was the what I'll say is the non-Microsoft solution was to have DNSSEC. And Microsoft, if I recall correctly, had secure or SDNS, security DNS. The problem with that is that you had to, if I recall correctly, load a client. And so now you're locked into Microsoft's world. And I'm sure I'm not certain, but
Well,
I'm
that
pretty
sounds like a
sure.
feature, not a bug from Microsoft's point of
Yeah,
view.
yeah, yeah. It would have been a feature.
Yeah.
The problem is the Linux world and the Apple world
Right.
and the device world wouldn't have access.
Yeah.
So the two of them kind of butted heads. And like a lot of standards, it didn't go anywhere and it just faded into history. And after that one article that I wrote, and it's funny, I did get a lot of fan mail for that. People recognize that article, and it just faded into history. Now Microsoft, oh, you want to add something?
No, I just see now the thing I hear about is DNS over HTTPS, which
Yeah.
makes no sense at all. And I think this Microsoft proposal is a lot better because if you have an HTTPS connection, you've already done DNS. So it's like putting the cart before the horse, dough.
Yeah, let's do our DNS lookup. Then then we'll make our connection. Then we'll be secure. Then we'll do our DNS
Now,
lookup.
in practice, it does mean that most of your DNS connections are now encrypted, and therefore people are
Yeah.
using it, but it's kind of ridiculous and obviously vulnerable in the early stages.
Yeah, yeah. So I've not looked at this, but Microsoft is coming up with Zero Trust DNS.
Yeah.
So this is something, a new initiative. And just so people know, Zero Trust, not Zero Trust DNS, but Zero Trust is something that's been around for a number of years. And we could talk about that at the end of it. But the product that I know it's out there has been Zscaler.
Well, I know
And
it's officially pushed by the US government now. We're all supposed to be moving towards zero trust.
yeah, well, we should have been moving towards it 10 years ago. And let's table Zero Trust for right now.
Yeah.
And have you read up on Microsoft Zero Trust DNS initiative?
Yeah, I read their article. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is you have a specific DNS server you must use, which goes to this Microsoft special DNS server, and the DNS server does all your filtering. It only lets you go to approved domains and IP addresses, which it knows, and it blocks, and that's the only way you can resolve DNS. And therefore, it's the main security boundary.
So is a client required?
Well, yes. And you also,
Yeah,
this lock-in is required. So I think the idea is as part of being in Active Directory, you would be forced to have only this DNS server and nothing else, which is pretty much standard anyway. I mean, if you let people use rogue DNS servers, then you've lost all control. And
yeah,
and so it sounds pretty good, although there are some comments at the bottom. And what's funny is I think the most penetrating comment they ignored and didn't answer because I'm afraid it's a really good question, which is what about those gateways, locked in gateways, captive portals? How am I going to
yeah,
log into my Wi-Fi? Those captive portals assume you can, and so that seems like a big problem. So I'm afraid, like many others, there's a serious security risk right at the start. To get to that first server you have to use the old insecure techniques.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But still, it
yeah.
sounds like a pretty inventive and creative solution. And
So,
yeah.
but the limitation here is you have to use a Microsoft DNS server or a Microsoft product.
Well, Well, yes, but there is just a proposal at this point, and maybe they can
Yeah,
get it approved as an RFC, and maybe the Linux world will go along with it and all that. If it's a smart enough idea, maybe it'll be a hit, but you can't try it yet. It's all just a proposal right now.
yeah, we're in proposal mode. So Zero Trust is an initiative that's been out there for a while.
Yeah,
And the product that I know is Zscaler, and I'm not really prepared to discuss it here because I'm not prepped for it.
yeah,
And they're essentially two versions. So, but let me try. So there are two kind of initiatives with Zero Trust. One is the data loss protection, and so every document that leaves an organization has to go through a DLP process, or data loss prevention, data loss protection portal, if you will.
yeah,
And that involves classifying documents. So that's one portion of Zero Trust.
right.
Okay, and if somebody gets a document out, then that document has to essentially phone home to make sure that the person that has the document is entitled to open and view the document. So there's some limitations there. Microsoft came out with a DLP initiative. Oh gosh, has to be about 15 years ago.
Yeah,
And it's still in there. Microsoft then moved it to the cloud. They have Azure information protection, and there's a whole suite of products that go along with that. I've worked on several projects with several companies where we've implemented that.
well, I remember Microsoft rolled this out with OneTrust, and it was really brilliant, where everything you shared was always encrypted, and the key was tied to your Active Directory account. So if
Right.
somebody was to take a copy and take it home on a thumb drive or something, they couldn't read it unless they were logged into the Microsoft account. So your data would no longer leak. That seemed like a really
Yeah.
good idea.
Well, except if you're in the Linux world or Apple world,
Oh, well, that's
that
as an unfortunate, unintentional side effect, those operating systems have to die and vanish because they're useless.
exactly,
Although to
exactly.
be fair, I think that's already the case. Now when I'm doing consulting, they give me like a virtual server. It's a Microsoft server on their network. So
Yeah.
typically it's the case. If you're working for a big corporation, you are trapped in the Microsoft world. You can't use anything else. That's a common side effect, and we all live with that.
Yeah. I would agree with that. So the second side of Zero Trust is actually pretty interesting. And that is, at least, and I'm talking from Zscaler again, I might be a little off on this, but essentially what Z Trust is, you trust no one.
Right. Every single request is verified. I want to use
Right.
the printer. I want to use the file share. Well, before you do that, let me make sure you're not looking suspicious.
Yeah, and so instead of having a VPN for outsiders where they have to come in and log in through a VPN,
Hmm.
what happens with Zero Trust, it's sort of the opposite, where you authenticate yourself not to the not to the VPN itself. In other words, you don't really even need a VPN anymore. Instead, what you're doing is you're requesting a document, and your identity is verified with through an outgoing server. You're making a request that's untrusted, and the trust is the outgoing server is verifying who you are. And that's usually with a certificate. There could be some other methods.
Well, that
But
reminds. Yeah.
uh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go
So
ahead.
you know what this does is this completely, almost,
Hmm.
but completely eliminates the attack surface. So you don't have a VPN to attack to, because the connections are all outbound or outgoing,
So
if you
that's like
will.
the old dial back model where you would
Yep.
call you back at a known phone. That's good. And by the way,
Yeah.
what you just said reminded me of something in Microsoft's new Zero Trust DNS. Another thing they're going to do is identify the endpoint with a client certificate, which is much because maybe currently you'll have like an administration interface on a server and it says only let in these IP addresses. And that's garbage because as you move, your IP address changes. So
Right.
actually authenticating the client with a client certificate is a whole lot better.
Yeah. 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 So, yeah, this whole zero trust model, Zscaler's out there. It's very expensive.
Hmm.
It's very well done. They have, as I recall from a year ago or a year and a half ago, 120 data centers in the sky, if you will, in the cloud. So you have full redundancy worldwide. And the initiative that Zscaler was putting out was for mobile, and they were doing partnerships to move Zscaler data centers
Hmm.
into the mobile world, or meaning the cell carriers. So the whole idea behind that was to reduce latency in response time.
Yeah. So Zscaler is sort of like a domain controller for your devices,
Yeah, gatekeeper. Yeah, and
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
VPN. Yeah. Yep.
So it's yeah, it's yeah, not really a VPN, but yeah, kind
But if it
of.
replaces VPN, well, because my next couple stories are about the persistent problems in VPNs.
Ah, okay.
So
So I tell you what, Sam, let me do a little bit of research, and for
yeah.
listeners, let me present a better job on this next
Yeah,
time.
I would like to hear about Zscaler because I don't know about it, and I'd like a good
Ah,
analysis.
so yeah, so let me do a little research. That'll be a topic for Friday. We'll go into the technology a little bit. And
Good.
I'm telling you, the other vendors, let me just kind of jump out here. Like the traditional Cisco, Palo Alto Firewall, Fortinet, all those VPN companies that are trying to do this through hardware,
Right.
right? They're hardware vendors. Juniper is probably in there. I don't
Mhm.
have the full list, but when they come to cloud, they've kind of pivoted, but they're a hardware company, and they're trying to push their hardware, modify their hardware to work with a zero trust initiative. This is what they call it, is zero trust,
Yeah.
but the solution is in the cloud. And the difference is Zscaler is in the cloud, was built with the cloud, and has no hardware at all. So, and it works with on-prem
Mm.
versus cloud or hybrid. So it's kind of a nice package solution, just needs to become affordable.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's
let me do a little bit of research and review on Zscaler, and then I'll give you kind of a better. We can talk about that next session,
yeah.
next time.
Another thing I saw in that Microsoft Zero Trust article of
Yeah,
DNS is, right now, if I do this in class, students are like connecting to a server, and the domain name of that server is just all over the place. It's in the DNS request, it's in the HTTPS handshake, and even if even when you use a secure site, the domain name of every site you go to is still sent in the clear in the client hello to set up the HTTPS. And apparently there is an initiative to encrypt that. There's an RFC, and that's why Microsoft says currently people try to regulate traffic by sniffing the DNS or by sniffing that thing, the server name indicator in the client hello, because those things are sent unencrypted, but all that stuff will very soon be encrypted. And you'll be using like DNS or HTTPS or DNS over TLS to make the resolution from this server. So Microsoft is, by the way, encrypting all the DNS in addition to securing the DNS so that no longer is any version of the domain name sent in the clear at any point in the connection. So that is an improvement.
yeah, interesting. Are you familiar with
Yeah,
QUIC
yeah,
protocol?
yeah. Quick is compression, though. I think not encryption. So it doesn't.
No, it's encryption
Is it
and
true?
also performance. Yeah. So tell you what, let me dig
Yeah.
out quick, and we'll talk about that,
Good.
since yeah, we'll have some fun on Friday.
All right. Well. Anyway, let me talk about VPNs because I've
Yeah,
always
please do.
I've done the same kind of thing in class where you turn on a VPN and now sniff the traffic and look how it's all, in fact, not encrypted. What's going on here? That's usually what happens. It doesn't actually protect you that well at all. One thing, like there was an article came out a while ago saying 80% of all VPN clients don't in fact encrypt the DNS. It still goes to your other DNS provider in the clear, which is true. It's very hard to find any DNS where all the traffic will go through the DNS. And
You mean through the VPN?
yeah, VPN, probably VPNs.
Yeah,
VPNs
so there
leak.
are two ways. Yeah, there are two ways you can do lookups with a VPN.
Yeah,
One is you can do it outside of the VPN.
right.
The other is you have to do your DNS lookup through the corporate server
Yes.
through the VPN tunnel, if you
Yes.
will.
And the second one is clearly what you want for security, but I
Correct.
suppose for performance, it almost always does the first one. And
And,
therefore, it doesn't really prevent people from seeing what you're doing.
yeah, yeah.
And
And
so, yeah,
I think the technical term isn't this split brain DNS?
no, split tunnel is the term, but this is
No,
not
no,
split.
split brain.
I never heard of split brain,
Okay, okay. Maybe I've got the wrong term, but
right?
it's where you're thinking either in the tunnel or outside the tunnel.
Yeah.
And there are pros and cons, obviously, but you're right for performance reasons.
Right. The main issue is performance, but you really,
Yeah.
in order for security, you want 100% of your traffic to go through the VPN, and it almost never does that. And even if you have software that tries to do that, there are holes. And that's why I got two articles here. The first one says your VPN is not as secure as it claims from Krebs on security. Somebody figured out that there is a DHCP optional field you can add with the malicious DHCP server that will specify the gateway in DHCP and set it equal to the DHCP server. And if you do that, it can take your established VPN connection, and when your DHCP lease expires, they can reroute it to go outside the VPN, and you will not see any message on your screen. It will interpret this as the VPN just staying connected.
Wait, run this by me
You
again.
go to a coffee house, you log into the
Okay.
VPN, and it's connected.
So
But
so I'm connected with my laptop to corporate network, VPN tunnel, everything is encrypted.
yes,
Got it. Okay.
now your DHCP lease expires,
And
which would
and
which would
from the
take
coffee house.
yeah, which would take now I'm not quite sure how they caused that to happen. I think there is some
Okay.
way to provoke that. And you can renew your DHCP lease. The malicious DHCP server sends you a different gateway.
I see. I
Your
see.
connection reconnects through the malicious gateway, which is now outside the VPN, and you don't know this has happened. Nothing pops up to warn you. Your VPN client just interprets this as, well, the VPN is still connected, everything's fine, but it's not fine because
Yes.
of unencrypted traffic.
Hmm.
So it sounds pretty serious.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, so what they'd have to do is trigger a expires event.
That's the part that's confusing to me because your lease would normally only expire after like 2 minutes of total inactivity, which would never happen when you have a VPN connected. It's got a heartbeat or something going there.
Well, no, wait. Let's back up here for a
Yeah.
second. So the DHCP lease expires based on the client not renewing
Now, what they
or
claim is that they
time
can,
interval.
yeah, they're claiming they can cause this with a DHCP starvation attack, but I still don't quite understand that part because somebody that's
Okay.
already connected, I don't know how you could force them to disconnect.
Right. They have a lease. They have a valid lease from the DHCP server.
Yeah, but you could send like a Wi-Fi DOS attack to just disconnect them from the Wi-Fi. I
Yeah,
think
I
they
would
could then
agree.
get a pop-up or something. That's why, anyway, they claim they can do it.
Um,
A couple details I'm not
okay.
quite understanding,
Okay.
but
So is this an attack in the wild right now?
no, no, it's a
No.
laboratory theoretical
Yeah,
attack,
okay.
but it's a weakness of VPNs. And the other one is pretty, another article about it, the same top.
So wait, Sam, before we go
Yeah,
on. So what happens is this is essentially a man in the middle attack.
yeah, yeah,
Is that
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
That's essentially it. But the point is, the user they could have their VPN appear to be connected and think everything's fine, and yet it's not fine. Their data is in fact being stolen, which kind of defeats the entire purpose.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking one way I believe you could do this would be to send a DOF packet, right, from the Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
But if you had the same SSID, then you would, with auto reconnect,
yeah,
then if the rogue DNS server, or pardon me, rogue Wi-Fi
yeah,
was stronger signal or quicker response time, then you could reauth to that bogus
yeah.
access point, and then you're man in the middle, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's essentially like that, but
Yeah,
somehow they're also defeating the encryption in the VPN they're getting. So it's
man in the middle.
yeah, it's a man in the middle attack.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'm not entirely sure they defeat the encryption in the VPN. I think they might just put themselves in the middle so they can see all the IP addresses you're talking to. But Anyway, it's one of
Yeah.
these
All right.
new kind of esoteric ones. The other one is just, it looks like a defect in Android. Apparently, Android has multiple
Yeah.
DNS leaks. So even if you have a good DNS client, a good VPN that is supposed to send the DNS through the VPN, it doesn't. It always just sends the DNS out directly. So you're now in practice, as far as I can tell, 80% of VPNs do this anyway, but apparently they all do it in Android. Android has some kind of defect in the operating system, the way the VPNs are configured. So,
Ay, 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 ay,
well,
ay.
this is the thing about mobile apps and so many things. If it works under normal conditions, people think everything is fine. And very often there are security problems that nobody notices.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is time, I guess, to go after DNS again. It was about 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and it really, for the most part, DNS hasn't changed. I mean, DNS,
Yeah.
since the beginning at DNS,
Yeah.
first we had host files, so DNS was a big, salvation.
And
Yeah,
Microsoft is going back to that. I noticed that now you used to have to get a host file and you could only talk to the known good places that you got on your floppy disk in the mail. And now Microsoft is going to make a server that has a allow list of places you can go that the administrator has to keep updated. And those are the only places you can go. That's going to be pretty painful to set up. We even have F-Secure. If you put the antivirus on your Windows machine, it has allow list security where only known good processes can launch. And that is, of course, much more secure, but nobody can live with it. You can't
right.
download,
Yeah.
everybody turns that off. And I think Microsoft will probably find the same thing. This sounds good, but everybody's going to turn it off because you can't do a Google search and click on a link. It'll say, oh, no, that's not on my allow list. You can't go there. You can't go there. It's probably going to be so annoying that nobody wants to live with it.
And we've had whitelists for 20 plus years. I mean, probably longer than
That's
that.
right. And it would be great, but it is so
Yep.
irritating. You
Yeah.
can't get
Yeah.
anything done.
Yeah. You can't see, that's why we need to move to the zero trust model.
Well, that's just sort of a more complicated way of implementing the same thing. Now you're going to say, well, I don't know how much to trust that website, so I can't let you go there. I have to wait for
Yeah.
someone to rate it like PG or X first.
Yeah. There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
So, I got a story for you. This came up. This was on Marketplace Tech as well as some other places.
Yeah.
And this has to do with AI. And this is kind of interesting. You might be able to, I don't know if you read up on this a little bit, but it's kind of interesting. So, couple facts here. Let me start with this. This has to do with AI and child pornography.
Hmm.
And there's a claim that's made in the article, and I did a little bit of research on this that goes to um, oh, not UNICEF, but maybe the EU. And anyway, the claim is that at any one time, there are 75,000 child predators online. So
That's believable.
you think there are that many?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All
And,
right.
and I know from talking to FBI agents that the
Yeah.
FBI top priority of innocent images, there really are people with kids locked in the basement using them to make kiddie porn. It really is. It's a real problem. It's out there.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's not. Yeah, I got to.
It's not like just a few people scattered. It is significant. There's a lot of it.
Yeah, and I guess we should also clarify and say that there's a range. In other words, we're
Yeah.
not talking about, and it's like crime,
Right.
right? There are all kinds of different crimes, and when it comes to child pornography, they're kind of there are three categories, as from what I remember with my training with the FBI. They're the consumers, the people that purchase it or are buying it.
Yeah.
And when I say buy, that doesn't necessarily mean with money.
Yeah.
Then there are the people that produce it, and they are not necessarily the consumers, but
Right.
they're producing a product that's and then there are the people that are distributing it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like the drug world, if you will.
Yeah. And
Anyway,
the producers are the ones,
yeah,
of course, the big targets because they actually have real kids they've kidnapped. So
yeah,
they're
yeah.
really serious criminals. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you a story at the end here for a second, but let me get into the article. So, here we are with AI. So we've got at least 750,000 predators. Let's just call it a million, because we're probably underestimating the total there.
That's probably counting anybody that consumes it, I would think, to get that number.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just going to call it a million because
Yeah,
no, I don't think anybody is counted. We know for sure,
yeah.
and people kind of come and go, but that's a different story. So let's not quibble over numbers.
Yeah.
So they're online, right? And they're trying to connect with minors. But what's going on right now with deep fakes is you can clip an image and paste it on somebody else's body, an adult or another child. So and obviously, they're superimposed images to things that are inappropriate, distasteful. The question that I kind of have is, and Sam, I haven't really thought about this, but is this legal? It's not child
I
porn.
think I think it's illegal to make a simulation of child porn, even like cartoons or anything. That's all illegal.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
I
it's
think,
also illegal to
yeah,
make like
okay.
where you paste somebody else's face on something to create fake porn images of someone. That is harassment or something. I think
Yeah,
that's also illegal.
yeah, okay. So pause on that one. I got a story for that. Charlotte Law. If just put that in your mind for a second. So what's going on right now is these images are out there, but the problem is the machinery to make the AI to generate that. Companies, and I'm not picking out any one because I don't have any facts. So I'm just going to, in a broad category, all the AI companies. What do we have? Google, we have Microsoft, we have Facebook. I'm sure
And
there are others.
a bunch of them, yeah.
Yeah, there are a
And
bunch of them.
Anthropic, and there's even like diffusion, the one specifically for images, and there's a bunch specifically for videos.
Yeah. And so what's happening is they know that this is going on, but
Right.
they're not doing anything or they're not taking enough action to block it at this time.
That's right. And this has been going around for years. I mean, the government wants to scan your phone for known child images, and they've been
Yeah.
trying to do that for like 5 years, and they keep getting blocked on privacy concerns. So the problem is, how would you do it and maintain people's privacy? And that is pretty much an unsolved problem.
Yeah. And I do know the FBI was doing fuzzy logic
Right.
where you could take a photo and kind of
You could detect it
fuzz.
even if it was distorted or trimmed or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
Idea.
flipped or something. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know where that's been. I haven't been following
I
that.
think the technology exists. It's just the privacy concerns that are preventing it from being deployed.
Okay.
I think Apple was going to build it into iCloud,
They were.
but maybe
Yes.
they even didn't do that over privacy.
Yeah, I think they retracted on that, is what I recall, or
Yeah.
there may have been a flaw that if the child porn is encrypted,
Oh, well, that would do it.
yeah, I mean, yeah, then it wouldn't be scanned. So
Yeah.
I think it was kind of a half-baked solution that wouldn't catch very many predators. So with that said, you want to add anything? Let me add my two comments that I
Oh,
set
go ahead.
aside.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have Netflix, if you're a Netflix subscriber,
Mhm.
there's a woman by the name of Charlotte Law who's a private investigator, or she's a became a private investigator. And there's a Hunter Moore out of Sacramento, California, was running a revenge porn website. And there were no laws at the time. Charlotte Law's daughter happened to take some topless photos of her, and they weren't made for distribution. She didn't send them to anybody, but they were on her phone, and she tried to move them to her computer, didn't know how to do it. She sent it through Gmail. Her Gmail account was hacked. Somebody found the photos, posted them up on revenge porn site. Daughter was horrified, goes to mom. They go to the police, they go to FBI. They said, sorry, we can't help you. Nothing illegal about it. And they're trying to impose,
Well,
go
hacking
ahead.
hacking the Gmail would be illegal, I guess.
Yes, hacking, but the photos
Yeah.
placed up on there, law enforcement at the time said nothing we can do.
I think now there are revenge porn laws. Yeah.
Now, I'm talking then.
Okay. Yeah.
Turns out Charlotte Law's husband and the stepfather said, I'm an attorney. What's the big deal with all this?
Yeah.
And he obviously did not understand. And I'm going to leave this as a cliffhanger, but eventually Hunter Moore, I believe he might be in prison right now, but Charlotte Law single-handedly is the one that enacted laws, worked with FBI, worked with the National Center, Missing and Exploited Children. And where I'm getting at that is there's a really good Netflix video of the whole story.
Hmm.
And I believe it's called Charlotte's Law, or maybe I'll do a Google search on this and find out what the title is. I saw that maybe about 6 months ago. I would highly encourage listeners to take a look at that video so you kind of know what's going on. And I will tell you that Hunter Moore totally destroyed a lot of women's lives.
Yeah.
And I do know that there was a another documented case was a kindergarten teacher whose boyfriend or ex went up on the porn site, Hunter Moore's porn site, Revenge Porn, posted some videos of the couple together that were unauthorized by the woman,
Yeah.
and was able to get in touch with the principal and other school officials. Charlotte found out about this, called this woman because she was going to get fired right on the spot.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's stories like that. There's several others. So now, just so we're clear, now revenge porn is illegal. Thank you, California. Thank you, California law uh, legislators, that we have laws against this. I don't know, but I assume it must be national. But that I'm not positive of, come to think of it. So we'd have to fact check that. I can't say for sure, but I do know that California revenge porn is illegal. Hunter Moore wound up not making very much money, kind of like Girls Gone Wild. So many people sued that
Yeah.
it wasn't worth it in the end for him. And he might be getting out of prison. I don't know. I'd have to do a little research on that story. So anyway, that's one. The other is the other one I wanted to bring up. You didn't have to remind me, not getting that old. And that is that this is from the FBI, that they had a girl who was involved, who was in pornography, child porn, and the FBI had images of her. And it wasn't until they looked at the wallpaper and they noticed there was Disney wallpaper. You may know this story, where the FBI finally, some agent kind of zoomed in on it and realized that it was a Disney wallpaper. They contacted Disney. Disney said, "Oh, that's not a consumer product. That wallpaper is specifically only in Disneyland hotels, and we have 4 versions of it, and it's every 4th room would have that wallpaper in there." And long story short, by using something in the background, the wallpaper, they were able to go back and look at who had checked in and kind of figure out what the time interval was. And again, I don't have all the details, but they did find the girl and they did break open this ring.
I know there's a whole volunteer group that they have meetings at DEF CON, um,
Yeah.
of people that archive photographs of hotel rooms everywhere. For this reason, they can
Oh,
find people that are being
interesting.
sex trafficked because they have a huge database of whatever a hotel room looks like, and they can try to match it up. There's a whole volunteer gang like that. A lot of people at DEF CON do that.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
It's obvious, but I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
And you know,
Yeah.
there's some people that have some odd hobbies. I know of another one that analyzes spray paint and spray paint droplets. And it turned out that this was a murder case. And it turned out that somebody used spray paint to spray paint the headliner in the car. And right? You know, that the ceiling inside the car,
Oh.
the fabric. They use
Mhm.
spray paint. And so what would happen is the droplets would fall down, and whoever the victim was, these spray paint droplets
Oh, yeah.
were in the hair, on the clothing.
Hmm.
And he's got a whole, I guess, library of these. And this goes back ways. And
Yeah.
he was able to identify the color. And he said, "Oh, I can tell by the way the droplets are. This was sprayed upward and the droplets
Yeah.
fell down, not against a wall or a flat surface, not vertical or horizontal spraying downward." And they convicted the guy based on the droplets. Interestingly enough, because I like these stories, is he thought he could get away with it, and he requested that the car not be destroyed because it was a unique car. And
Hmm.
he thought for sure that he was going to get out. And so he was convicted. He went in on appeal, and he lost the appeal. And the reason that he lost the appeal was they were able to do more research on the car and the droplets because they preserved the evidence, if you will. So he's got a lifetime sentence at San Quentin. I'm not sure where he is.
Yeah.
Might be Soledad, one of those, but he's not getting out. And that reaffirmed his request to keep the evidence, convicted him even, or reaffirmed his conviction. How's that?
Well, I've heard these stories all my life and seen all the TV shows about it, and it's in Sherlock Holmes and everything. And
Yep.
the thing that kind of ruins it for me is learning how much of that forensics was later proven to be fake. And I'm thinking a lot of this is probably false, where they make up this miraculous technological thing and say, I was able to match these tiny little droplets when they weren't really able to match it. They were just telling the cops what they wanted to hear. Because, in fact, this came up yesterday at my talk. You were talking about deblurring images to see from the surveillance photo of the license plate, you can't really see. And I said, AI
Mm-hmm.
can deblur it, but it's really just guessing. They said, well, how would you explain that in court? And I said, well, it's just up to the forensic examiner. Like, remember, Steve Haley said, it's how impressive you are. I said, well, my device worked and I've tested it and calibrated it. So it just depends on how much the jury trusts you. And there was an attorney there and like another guy who was in the field, I think an expert witness, and they both stood up and said, that's exactly how it works. So it's all just how persuasively you can say, I can tell that those droplets came from this exact can of spray paint and not that one. And, I bet a lot of the times it's all garbage. Like, fiber matching was just removed
Oh,
from being trusted, and that was used to put tons of people in jail.
yeah. So, I think we talked about this with
Yeah.
the bombers and fingerprints. And fingerprints, the FBI and all law enforcement has had to change their testimony. For how long have fingerprints been used? 180 years, 150
Long time.
years?
Yeah.
Yeah, well into the late 1800s, I believe.
Yeah.
And because of the bombing in the Madrid subway, the FBI, for those who don't know the story, identified somebody who was in Seattle, Washington, or Washington State area, Seattle area, whereas Interpol identified, and this was, I believe, an American or maybe a foreigner who was an American. He'd never been to Spain, but that didn't stop the FBI. He was arrested. He was put in jail. He was detained, I think, for weeks, lost his job, on and on. It's kind of sad story.
Yeah.
But clearly he was the wrong guy. But the FBI was making him fit the scenario.
Right. That's the problem.
Whereas whereas Interpol said, we got the same fingerprints
Yeah.
and we identified somebody else, and it made more sense. It was somebody, I'm gonna say, from the
Yeah.
Middle East or a terrorist group who did the bombing. I've forgotten the details. And so as a result of that, now you have two fingerprints matched to the same person or to two different people. And what's more interesting about this is the FBI had, I believe, 5 different fingerprint experts independently verify that that individual was the owner of that fingerprint.
Yeah.
And so the FBI was totally convinced that they were infallible and that had to be the person.
Yeah. And fingerprints are just random. There is no reason why they have to be totally unique.
Well, yeah, and as far as we know, nobody has proven that two people don't have the same fingerprints.
It would seem obvious there must be a chance. I mean, how many different fingerprints can?
Well, yeah, but the only way to know for sure would be to collect everybody's
Right,
fingerprints
right.
in the world and do a comparison,
Well, I know
which has
people that
never
would
been
love.
done.
I know people would love to do that, and their DNA too. Bunch of law
Yeah,
enforcement. Anyway,
yeah.
I just got.
Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
so
It's interesting.
next story.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
And
ahead.
then the last one I got, there's a whole bunch of articles about this tiny proxy scandal. I've never used tiny proxy, but apparently it is used in Internet of Things devices extensively. It is the smallest, fastest way to get an HTTP connection to your device. And
Okay.
it's got a vulnerability which was found by, at least reported by Cisco, and but the developer came up and said, nobody told me. Cisco must have just mailed it to some stupid email address they found in some old list that didn't work. Nobody gave me any warning at all, so I patched it, blaming Talos from Cisco and not reporting it correctly. But anyway, it's got a use after free bug, and people can take over the device through the HTTP connection with a simple attack. They call it a trivial attack, a trivial exploit. And so people are upset about that. And the problem is, of course, it's Internet of Things devices, so they probably don't have any automatic update process. So it's kind of hard to see how you're ever going to get it fixed. But
So
anyway,
what kind of devices are we talking about?
affected products, Unix-like operating systems, lightweight for use in small networks. So I don't know. One of the
Okay.
reports said, like, refrigerators, light bulbs, all,
So like the Samsung refrigerator.
yeah, yeah,
You, you, you,
all the little devices in your house that have a small processing power and they want to have some kind of internet connection. This is the thing you use if you want a
I
small,
see.
lightweight. Yeah,
So this is kind of like the Ring doorbell, but the Ring doorbell will push out an update once they find a vulnerability.
yeah.
But Samsung, I'm kind of making a joke because if you bought a Samsung refrigerator with the screen in the door for $8,000 at a premium price, there was one day when Samsung didn't do an update, and so the screen just defaulted to a load error, and so people who bought this $8,000 refrigerator, I'm not sure on the price, but you get my point, have now a refrigerator that says bootloader errors or something like that. The screen's gone and it's completely useless. And Samsung refused to do the update, is what I call. Maybe it was LG. I'm pretty sure it was Samsung.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem with smart devices. I mean, everything I own is dumb, and I'm happy that way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, pros and cons.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it for me. Sam, you got another story or is that it for
No,
you?
no, that's it for me too. So that's it for this one, and I'll have another one on Friday.
Yep, and I'll do a little research on Zscaler
I
and
would
we'll go
like to
from
hear
there.
that. It sounds
Okay,
very interesting, and I do not know about it.
very good.
Okay, I'm stopping.